So I'm joined this morning by this esteemed panel who will each introduce themselves and explain their passion and why they are here today. And I'd like to introduce our last, but no means least, in fact, probably our most important panelist, Susan Mumford.
Very charming, Joe. Thank you. So my name is indeed Susan J. Mumford. I'm a sector supporting entrepreneur for the art market. In context of today's discussion, I'm the founder and CEO of the Association of Women Art Dealers, also known as AWAD. You know, trade associations always have to have their little acronym. So as the email signature also reads, whenever I send anyone a message, it says, my side hustle is addressing conscious, unconscious, and intersectional bias. I'll speak on that later. As for core value, continuing my signature, fairness, which drives all that I do. And I've looked back on my life time and time again and realized how much that was even the case for what I was doing, little initiatives as a child in my neighborhood. So indeed, I arrived in England in 2000, thinking that my future would be in the form of a gallery cafe in my home capital of Little Rock, Arkansas, explaining my accent. However, it turned out that the same person who was determined as a girl to show the boys that a girl could also play football, which we called soccer where I'm from, the seemingly natural way that I was with entrepreneurial activities in my neighborhood, that would be with a lemonade stand, my leaf raking business, so on and so forth. And that's all of that despite a neighborhood bully, just so happens to be a boy, would always pick especially on me. I don't think that was a surprise now that I'm at this stage of my life. And the passion with which I was the co-founder of my university environmental concerns committee all said much more about what was to come. So I did set up as an art dealer and gallerist in Soho in London. And I had that career for a decade. And it was during that time that we were hit by the credit crunch, crashing of banks, and I decided to set up an initiative, a localized network for women and women identifying art dealers. That was early 2009. I still remember the moment that I had that light bulb idea. That became the Association of Women Art Dealers, a multi-chapter international not-for-profit. And by the way, those of you who might be wondering, gosh, but surely you were 10 years old at the time. I'll speak to that later as well. So we started this network, and within a year saw various businesses being saved. As part of that work, we started going out to various industry events, running panel discussions, talking about bias, talking about the real experiences of the sector. I eventually learned to present numbers first and foremost at the beginning of panel discussions. So we didn't have questions like, is there really a problem in the sector? But instead we would say, here are the statistics, here's the reality, just like what we're doing in today's discussion. How can we go about tackling it? How can we have those male allies? How can we improve the situation with power? You can see I love this sign behind me, knowledge is power. And indeed, it is now not a surprise, although it was at one stage, when I was first presented the following question by a man who I'd known for years and years. I bumped into him at an art fair, and he said, but Susan, why did you need to set up the Association of Women Art Dealers? I treat all women the same. Deep breath and explain. And I can see of my fellow panelists some acknowledgement. So we do indeed, we've had much work to do. Just one other story going back to childhood is that I recall a boy in my neighborhood shouting, "You throw like a girl." Now I must have been about 10 years old when this happened. And what I still remember is I looked to him and I said, I hope so. And what I recall happened next is he didn't know what to do. And we kept on playing and we had a great time. Now that moment, that discovery was absolutely vital for future years to take what was a moment when I could have been defensive, had an almost unconscious reaction. I instead brought it into my conscious mind and I went, how can I respond to this? I did. I didn't tell him off. I did it with grace and we were able to carry on. And let's just hope that perhaps some of those boys on the football field that who would say, boo, we've got a girl on the team this year, or that next door neighbor who said that to me, perhaps that helped later in life realize that girls can throw a ball in their own way as well. In terms of why I'm here today, you can tell that I speak about this with passion. I've learned that I am somebody who is willing to use my voice I use it for good, and I often speak on behalf of others. I'm very happy, very willing to do so. We might make it look easy, but trust me, it's not always easy to do that. So I hope that myself, alongside the panelists today, we inform and inspire action as a result of this roundtable discussion, with input, of course, from our engaged audience as well.
So I'd like to bring Susan back onto the into the spotlight and ask you a question. So Susan, you've built networks, as you were saying, in this global art world. If you don't mind me saying, you have a very youthful appearance. You must have faced bias and discrimination over the years as both a woman and also appearing young and inexperienced. Can you talk about that?
Perhaps I've experienced it once or twice, and I suspect having ginger hair plays a role as well, actually. That might sound ridiculous to some, but I've long wondered, maybe there's this unconscious idea that I should be in a cave and uneducated with, I don't know. So in terms of that example of intersectional bias, it is something I've actually experienced a phenomenal amount, to the extent that when I was an early stage art dealer, to give you an idea, I first set up in business in 2004 when I was, quick calculation, 26 years old. And I used to go home to my first husband, lovely person, still close friends, and I would say, I would like to either have my year of birth tattooed on my forehead, or to have a card whenever somebody questions me that I could just give to them. And so I've just anecdotally wondered over the years how many, because I've been running business since 2004, I've been completely self-supporting. I've always just wondered how many sales did I lose? The last art fair that I did before I went on to other pastures and supporting businesses in the sector instead, partially or largely, in fact, inspired by all of the various experiences that I had had. I made a decision at that art fair that what I would do at the next one is I would have a respectable looking man who didn't know a thing about art possibly on the stand, who could take people and then hand them to me. And it actually turns out that there are couples who I know who have fairs who have stands at art fairs where that kind of thing happens, where she'll bring along the husband, he gets all the questions, and then he actually passes her on, the person on to the person who knows about the fair. So when it comes specifically to the point on age, what is one thing to mention is that, speaking to what Rose was saying earlier, is that I get a really bizarre experience, because on the one extreme, I get high respect from people who know or know of me in the sector. I'm known to go to art events and people will say, "Hey, you're Susan." I'll go, "Yes, I am." And then, of course, I turn the attention to them and what they're doing in their careers and their lives. And then on the other extreme, I get a lack of being taken seriously at all. And it's just really odd. And so when it comes to something like that point of age, it actually is often mentioned to my face in a group of people, because people don't have necessarily the respect for someone who's younger. They think it's okay to talk about that person's age in front of a group of people at professional events. I will have been at the same event as some people in this call today, where this has actually taken place on site. And so that's where you do learn, speaking to what Mark was just saying, you learn how to come up with phrases that you can just say, and it's extremely helpful to do that. And as my own confidence grew and as I had more and more experience of this, I was able to be cheeky and fun and put it back on the other person, and to get them to think about why they were asking that question, to get them to self-reflect as to why that was taking place. And just 2 weeks ago, I had a man who's younger than me asking me for my advice on what to do when you're not taken seriously giving a presentation. So I was giving him advice on how he could establish authority at the beginning of a talk so that then people would actually listen to him. And I thought, wow, I've now got, people younger than me. So perhaps I can at this stage have some gratitude to still be experiencing it in my mid 40s. And I say that intentionally for those watching now or the replay, that I think, okay, I actually know how to address it. And it's something that we can all learn from and then teach others. So if there are others who experience that, what I would urge you to do is to learn how to address it. And then when other people might be experiencing the same thing, let them know what you do and learn from them as well.